Hello and God bless. My name is Neville Solomon and welcome to Solomon Ministries. Today we're going to be speaking on the topic of purpose. More specifically, how to use your purpose in the local church. If this is your first time visiting us, it's great to have you. I'm asking that you like, comment, or subscribe to our page. If you're a part of the Solomon community, I'm so happy that you're here again, and I'm hoping that you'll enjoy the word. So, my prayer to you is that you'll be blessed by this word. So let's get ready for the word. Hello, it's me once again, Neville Solomon. We're going to be talking on the topic of purpose. I believe that every human being is created with the image of God on the inside of them, and that God has a divine will for them, that He has a purpose for them. More specifically, there's really only one purpose, and that's God's purpose. And God's purpose is for all humanity to be connected with Him. More specifically, to be a believer who will invest their life in living the way that He wanted them to live, or He has created us to live. So today I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about you have a purpose. And that purpose is found in God. So I want to encourage you, whoever you are, whether you're a Christian or you're not a Christian, to start to explore who God is. Because the more you understand who God is the more you understand yourself. More specifically today, I want to talk to you from the subject matter of just understanding your purpose. From a practical standpoint, there are two things you have to do to understand your purpose. Number one, you have to understand what your gifts, your talents, and abilities are. So I call that your general purpose. Things that you're really good at, things that interest you, things that that really fire you up, things that you love, things that elicit emotions in you. Your purpose is your motivation. Your purpose is the thing that drives you. You see, it's good to know what you're good at. But once you know what you're good at, then you have to begin to look at what drives you, what your motivations are. You have to start to look at why do you do what you do. If you feed the homeless and you have that drive to feed the homeless and you're upset with others that don't have that drive, why do you have that drive to feed the homeless? You see, when your drive is coming from God, it's unselfish and it's about serving others. And it generally comes from a place of passion to help others to live, whether it be physically, whether it be psychologically, or whether it be spiritually. So when we're talking about understanding our purpose, to truly understand your purpose, you have to understand why you do what you do and what is your motive. God wants us to be people who are on fire for life. And one of the best ways to be on fire for life is to serve other people and to care for other people. This morning I want to talk to you very, very briefly on the life of David. One of the biggest events in David's life. David, he was fortunate to fight against Goliath, and in fighting against Goliath, he transformed Israel. It was his purpose to care for the people of Israel because he was anointed to become a king. But David was so passionate about it that it didn't really matter what the circumstance looked like. He knew that he was prepared for his time to serve the people. I want to talk a little bit about that because in our humdrum lives, we're living our daily lives. We don't really see our life like David, to see that we're having this giant transformation where we can just do something amazing to transform our lives and to transform the lives of others. Most of us, we kind of go day to day, minute to minute. Right now, a lot of people are at home and they feel shut in and they feel, isolated. And sometimes you even start to ask yourself the question, like, what really is the purpose of my life? Because it seems like life, just kind of just one step at a time, can be a little bit boring, can be somewhat, monotonous. But at the end of the day, I believe that David's story can highlight to us that sometimes we have a gift on the inside of us, and if we're put in the proper environment, we can change lives. So we need to understand what we're good at, and we need to understand why we're good at it, and align that why with the heart of God. So it's not good enough to be kind to people for no reason or just because you want to be kind. You have to find a deeper motive. Because after a while, you're going to become frustrated if you're kind to people and they're not really showing thankfulness or gratefulness. But when you start to do things, in service to God, or you do things like you're being employed by God, you behave in a very different fashion. I want to read for you 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 38 to verse 40. It says, "Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them. 'I cannot go in these,' he said to Saul, 'because I am not used to them.' So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his slingshot in his hand, approached the Philistine." For those of you who have actually studied the life of David, you know how the story continues. That David was a shepherd boy, came to drop some food off for his brothers. The army of Israel was afraid of this giant named Goliath, who was shouting at them and frightening them and scaring them, and nobody wanted to face Goliath. But when David heard the voice of Goliath and heard the negative things he was saying about God, he became incensed and he became on fire. He presented himself to Saul, said, "Saul, I'll fight this giant." Saul said, "Okay." Saul tried to put his armor on David. David felt that David said that he was uncomfortable in the armor, so then Saul allowed him to fight the way how he was naturally built to fight. David picked up 5 stones from the brook, ran up to the giant with a slingshot, hit him in the head, and the rest is history. So the question is, what does this story have to do with your purpose? What does the story have to do with exercising your gifts and your talents to help other people? Before I get into that, I just want to talk to you about 2 things that you need to do to really discover your gifts. The first thing that you need to do to really discover your gift is that you have to sit down and you have to study yourself. What are you good at? What are your abilities? What comes naturally to you? What are repetitions of positive things that you've done from your childhood into adulthood that you can see in yourself that's a pattern? Sometimes these things might seem random, and sometimes, you may not fully understand how it relates to your purpose, but it's good to understand who you are. As Christians, a lot of people are not spending enough time in the Bible, are not spending enough time praying. Therefore, they don't really understand God. But for those of us who do spend a lot of time praying, who do spend a lot of time studying the Bible, we might have a good sense of who God is. But on occasion, when we're looking at our own motives and our own thought patterns, sometimes we don't understand ourselves. That's why I think it's very important, along with studying God, that you need to understand and to study yourself. You have to get to a place where you pray and you ask God to reveal to you things about yourself so that your heart and your mind can open up, so you can have a better understanding of who you are. But also, you also have to sit down and study yourself. So here's assignment number 1 of understanding your purpose, is that you should sit down, write a list. I used to give the number of 10, but I think that if you can go even higher, try to write a list of 100 things that you're good at. 100 skills that you have that when you use them, they help people. I think it's very important that you do that, because you'll start to see patterns in your behavior. You'll start to see patterns of how you can do some things. So I think that's number 1. You really have to do that. And I think number 2, you should go and talk to people. And I know this is uncomfortable, because the more I teach this, is the more a lot of people will turn their ears off, because especially Christians, they don't think they have any responsibility to do the work of God, that God just works through them. They don't have to think, they don't have to study, they don't have to read, they don't have to understand anything, they don't have to work, they don't have to do anything. And it is true that when you're being saved, that you require no work. Salvation doesn't require work. But to live out your purpose in life does require work. And if you don't live out your purpose, you actually shortchange people that are around you from experiencing your giftedness, from experiencing your unique contribution to the world. So I think number one, you should write a list. And number two, you should let other people speak into your life so that you can understand from their perspective what they think should also be on the list. So those are two easy things that could help us as it relates to our purpose. I would probably add a third thing before we continue talking about this situation, is that I think that you should also, when you look at the things that you're good at, ask yourself the question, why do you do them? And be honest about it. And if your why comes from a negative or selfish place, then it's good to, challenge yourself and to ask yourself, okay, if this why was seen from the perspective of God, what would I do? If you're lucky enough to be doing your thing or your gift or your purpose for the right reason, then that means that your why would be coming from the heart of God or from the perspective of God. So when you start to look at the pattern of your life, you're good at this one thing, why do you do it? You're good at that one thing, why do you do it? You'll start to see that there's a repetition of why you do the things that you do. It doesn't have to be grandiose, because it could be as simple as the fact that you want to do a good job. You see, that's an honest thing, because you honestly want to do a good job. That comes from the heart of God. The heart of God wants excellence from us. From another person, it could be that you don't want to short you. You want people to have the best opportunity that they can have because you didn't have the best opportunities growing up. I think that's excellent. Another person, their purpose could be grounded upon the concept that I want to have control in my life. I want to have dominion in this earth. I want to have authority. I want to have power. And a lot of times people see that as negative, but that's actually a good thing, because if you have power and you're looking to help people, you will use your power to empower others. There's a lot of different purposes that a person can have. There's a lot of different motivations. There's a lot of different whys. But every why should align up with the heart of God. For myself, when I look at my life, I see a pattern as well. There are a few things that I'm good at, and I'm not saying it so much to brag, because I find we live in a culture now where nobody wants to talk about what they can do well. Nobody wants to talk about their gifts. Nobody wants to talk about this or that. But the thing you don't understand is that we're living in a time period that is in a famine for leadership. And what leadership truly is a person who's gifted standing up and declaring that gift and offering it to others, either to help them or to also inspire them to walk in the same gift or a similar gift. Would you say that Martin Luther King was selfish? Would you say that Mother Teresa was selfish? Would you say that people like Gandhi and other people who sacrificed their life, would you say that these people were selfish? And in some way, these individuals tapped into some aspect of their gift. Now imagine if you partner with God and you say, God, reveal to me the totality of my ability and my gifting. And you partner with Him. And you begin to declare in His name that you're going to begin to do some of the things you were born to do. Not out of ignorance, not even by intuition, but you start to do it with a clear, thought out plan and partnership with God. That would be amazing. And I think too much of us allow our culture, which is so full of pride, our culture which is so full of entertainment and so full of all kinds of things, and that same culture is telling us not to find good in ourselves. You shouldn't talk about yourself. It's not about my purpose, it's about God's purpose. But here's the whole thing. If you're in a family and you have a son and you desire for your son to have a life moving into the future, and he looks in your face and he says, Dad, I don't feel like working because you work. I just lie down and just relax. You would perceive that son to be lazy. And the same thing that happens as it relates to our purpose. If you're saying that, God, I'll do your purpose, and you're not doing anything, first of all, you're lying. And second of all, you're actually not doing the purpose of God, because the purpose of God is one thing, but it requires many different actions. For example, I have one body, but I have 2 eyes, I have 2 hands, I have 2 feet. These are all members of my body. And even though the members of my body function by my brain, and my brain begins to bring symmetry to my body so that my body can accomplish one purpose or one vision, at the end of the day, each part of my body has a purpose. The purpose of my eyes is to see. If I'm trying to accomplish a task that requires my eyes to be open, if my eyes are closed, my body is in trouble. The purpose of my hands are to grab and to manipulate and to control and to touch things. If my hands are not on my body, or if my hands do not function on my body, then I'm missing a part of what my brain desires to bring forth purpose. God has one purpose and we're one body. But each part of the body has a function, which is in fact another word for purpose. So what is your function? What is your purpose? We're talking about how to use your purpose for the local church. But I want to get back to David. David recognized that there was a certain pattern of how people fought wars. There was a certain pattern of how people fought wars. People fought wars in armor, with swords, with staves, and they ran each other and they did hand-to-hand combat. But because David was in the presence of God, God could download into David a futuristic style of war, a futuristic style of fighting, a futuristic style of his gift. The thing that makes you gifted is that you don't think about your gift the way that everybody else thinks about it. The thing that makes you gifted is that you begin to think differently. And it's your thought pattern that moves into your gift abilities, that moves into your actions, that transform situations. So David realized that I've been practicing a different style of fighting. I've been practicing a very different style of fighting at home when I was taking care of the sheep. When I was taking care of the sheep, the style of fighting that I would practice is I would grab a sling and I would shake the sling around and whip it at things so I could fight enemies from afar with very little effort. David created a technology of fighting that the old obsolete system didn't understand, didn't respect, and therefore was not prepared for. Could it be that God has put a technology on the inside of you that the world is not prepared for as it relates to the evil of the world, or the darkness of the world, but as it relates to those who require life? By utilizing that technology that God put on the inside of you, you can transform people's lives. So David created this technology, or probably he adopted the technology from somebody else, and he began to use the sling, and he used it on Goliath, who probably thought it was funny until it hit him in the head and he was dead. You see, a lot of times people will not respect the gift that's on the inside of you because they've never seen it before. It doesn't make any sense. COVID-19 took place in the world, and a lot of churches have refused to be online as it relates to teaching the word. They thought it was silly, thought it didn't make any sense. Nobody watches it. It's a waste of time. And then when COVID-19 came and churches were shut down temporarily, everybody was trying to run online to learn how to do online when they had online for at least a decade. For 10 years or more, we could have done our services online. And for those who have done services online or who perpetually did it week after week, it was an easy transition. And in fact, because they were present, a lot of people who go to other churches who didn't have that presence, that person who was prepared was able to minister to people that weren't even at their church. Because there's a technology on the inside that if you respect it and you use it at the right time, it can touch people's lives. When I use the word technology, it's not so much always like computers, and it's not so much always things like that. When I use the word technology, I'm saying there's a unique ability on the inside of you that God can use. So what God does now is that God uses David, who is young, who has a different way of thinking, and he begins to utilize him to do things that have never been done before in a way that was amazing, that it helped to save people's lives. It helped to save the people in his community's lives. So what I'm talking about the local church is that God has put some ideas on the inside of you. God has put some thoughts on the inside of you. He's caused you to be in a place where you have some ideas you've never seen before. Church doesn't really make sense. But I think it's worth a conversation, and it's worth some prayer to really ask God to take those things that are in you out of you for the community. You see, the enemy is fighting against many things, but here are three major things the enemy is fighting against. Number one, the enemy is fighting against fellowship, against people working together. Because he recognizes that there's something on the inside of you that if you use it, you can help somebody else. So if you keep people divided, people at home, people separated from each other, then you'll miss out on that gifting and that ability in another person. And also they'll miss out on that gifting and ability that's inside of you. Number two, a person has a gift on the inside of them and they need someone to mentor them or someone to help them. And if you're by yourself, you oftentimes cannot see your gift, and also you don't know what to do with your gift. So the enemy fights us against understanding our purpose. He belittles your purpose and makes it sound like it's a joke. Online services? That's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. We have 1,000 people in the church. What do we need online services for? Because there might come a time when you're not allowed to go to the church. Isn't it silly to have a church with 1,000 people and when you're putting up a video, it looks horrible? But yet that's happening even right now because people didn't take the technology that was inside of a person seriously. If you have the ability to create videos and to create strong audio, the church needs you. If you have creativity, ability to be able to deal with people that have conflicts with each other and to help people to move from conflict to conflict resolution, it seems like that's something for a counselor, but the church needs you. As a matter of fact, the world needs you. There's so much conflict that people have, the world needs you. Number three, the third thing about it is that people have been put into this mindset of passivity, where they don't really honor great ability, not only in themselves, even in other people. I was at a meeting one time, and I'll say the name of the pastor, is T.D. Jakes. And T.D. Jakes was talking about some of the phenomenal things he was doing as it relates to online ministry. And this was a few years ago. And I was sitting down beside some other pastors, and a lot of the pastors enjoyed it, but there was one particular pastor that was beside me saying, "This is a waste of time." I'm thinking like, brother, I don't know about you, but I like T.D. Jakes, and I'm assuming because you're at his meeting that you like him too. Why are you here? And what I find is that people disrespect success. People disrespect people that are gifted. So that makes those of us who have gifts that are hidden want to hide them. But my encouragement is that it's better to be disrespected and gifted and allow your gift to flow than to be respected by people and you don't respect yourself. You'll never fully feel free until you walk in your purpose. Most people, if they watch this video, they don't even know what I'm talking about. It's because your purpose has been stuffed down so low that you're not even thinking about the fact that you have purpose on the inside of you. Now, I'm not talking about being disobedient or doing crazy stuff. I'm talking about that if you're in a church, you're probably under a leader who likes you, or who at least can tolerate you. And if there's something that's in you that's innovative in the church, most pastors nowadays really would like to help. So I'm saying that if you have a gift on the inside of you, begin to search out some of the gifts that are not typical, but that can destroy giants. You see, what happened during David's time is that everybody had a sword. Everybody had a shield. Everybody had armor. In the church today, everybody preaches. Everybody sings. Everybody cooks food. What is in you that's not that? Now, I'm not disrespecting that either, because some of y'all, you cook so well that I'm like, keep cooking. You know, some of y'all, you preach so well, I say, keep preaching. Some of you sing so phenomenally, keep singing. I'm not against that, but I'm saying for those of you who may not have those gifts, or for those of you who may have a greater gift on the inside in another area, why let it die? I'm upset because there's some of you who are letting your gifts die, not only in relation to not serving at church, you don't even serve anywhere, like you don't use it anywhere. But I think it's also a shame if you're at work and you're using your gift of administration and organization, your gift of event planning, your gift of just being able to calm people's spirits, to empathize, to listen. People's spirits to empathize, to listen. We have so many gifts. So many gifts. I can't even count them all. I can't even mention them all. You could be from music. It could be to poetry. It could be to painting. It could be so many different gifts and so many different abilities that all work into purposes that, when synthesized, can do great things in the kingdom of God. So we really, really have to get to the place where we can trust God to work in us and to work through us. So here's what I'm saying is that we have to begin to volunteer at our church. And not just volunteer in terms of for the typical things. We have to begin to think outside the box and begin to think about, first and foremost, what does our church need? In some churches, they need ushers, they need greeters, they might need people to volunteer in different areas with children's church and different programs. So look at some of the areas in the church where there's need, especially if you have a gift or you have a purpose in that area. Look at areas of need. Then after looking at areas of need, start to look at the unique gifts that you have on the inside of you. What can you do really, really well? What do you do effectively that helps people, that transforms people's lives? You can use that same ability in your church. For myself, and I feel a little bit guilty talking about this, but I have talked about it before, is I'm a really, really good writer. And yet I've chosen only to speak. I've chosen only to kind of counsel people, but I haven't put a lot of effort and energy into my writing ministry. And what I find is, a part of it why I don't do this, because I feel like a lot of people where I minister or where I teach, they're not really into reading that much. But at the end of the day, where God is expanding my mind, is that if He put the writing in me, then there has to be some people that He put the reading in them. So for example, the reading may not be the community that I talk to primarily, or it could be, and they just haven't had the opportunity. But at the end of the day, if He puts a gift on the inside of you, He wants you to express that gift so that you can help people. As a matter of fact, I'll even go this far. Even this particular podcast, I've done some writing to prepare myself for it. And that gift of writing, even though it's not expressly seen, it's coming through in this video. So God has put a gift on the inside of you, and you have to start to use that gift. Then you have to expand your mindset and think, how can I partner with my church to do things even beyond the church? To develop ministries outside the four walls of the church, and to become unique. You see, churches have become so I'm not really trying to condemn or to judge, but I'm just being straight up, is we become so predictable that a human being knows what you're going to do. Sinners know what we're going to do sometimes. And when David was coming at Goliath, he started laughing because he said, I've never seen this before. This is ridiculous. We have to start to get into our gifts so much that people start to see things they've never seen before, and they think to themselves it's ridiculous, and pow. Before you know it, you become a disciple. Let's use our gift at a different level. Let's have a conversation at a different level. Sometimes people get frustrated with me because they don't know where I'm going with the conversation. Because we've talked to so many ministers who are almost like robots, where people have all